Welcome to our podcast. Today we're diving into the intriguing world of ballet dancer earnings. How much do they actually make?
Absolutely. There's so much nuance in those numbers. It's fascinating, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we know that ballet dancer salaries vary drastically, from as low as around $14,500 per year, especially for entry-level types, to over $250,000 for principal dancers at top companies.
Exactly. And it's not just about experience, right? Location and the prestige of the company play huge roles too.
Right. For example, dancers in major cities like New York or San Francisco might face high living costs. So even if they're earning on the higher end, the numbers need to match up with local expenses.
Yeah, definitely. What's really interesting is that while an average annual salary might hover around $30,000, there are many exceptions. That 30K figure is just the baseline.
Exactly. And then you have entry-level dancers in big troupes earning somewhere between $31,000 and $36,000. But then the progression, as dancers become more experienced or take on lead roles, their earnings jump, sometimes even into six figures.
That's so true. Speaking of progression, I find it quite striking that freelance ballet dancers really face a roller coaster of income variability. They can earn anywhere from $20,000 to over $80,000, right?
Yep, absolutely. Freelancers definitely have more ups and downs. It's like one week you could be getting one lucrative contract and the next you're scrambling for gigs.
Exactly. And what about those seasonal performances like the Nutcracker? I heard they can pay really well, around $2,200 to $3,000 per week.
Right? And that kind of seasonal boost is a game changer for dancers. It reminds me of getting a bonus on top of the steady salary, which can really help with the, high living expenses in expensive cities.
Yes, indeed. Now, one thing I sometimes wonder about. Do you think these numbers truly reflect a livable wage for ballerinas? I mean, even with the higher salaries, some dancers still struggle financially.
That's a great question. It really depends on factors like cost of living, additional income sources, and even benefits like health insurance and pensions. For instance, when you factor in the 15-20% in benefits that big companies offer, it somewhat softens the blow of the high rent and overall expenses.
I get that point. But would you say that dancers at less prestigious companies or freelancers are left with more financial stress compared to their counterparts in top companies?
Absolutely. Dancers in smaller companies and freelancers often face financial uncertainty. It can be a real challenge balancing long-term financial stability when your income is so unpredictable.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where supplementary income really comes into play, like taking on teaching gigs or even commercial performances.
Exactly. Teaching, choreographing, or even guest appearances can add an extra $5,000 to $15,000 annually. And in some cases, top principals, they can double their base salary through these additional engagements.
That's pretty impressive. One thing that really caught my eye is how the geographic disparities play out. I mean, a dancer in New York might earn more hourly, something like $25 per hour, versus a national average slightly lower.
Right. Location makes a huge difference. For instance, the Bureau of Labor Statistics listed a median hourly wage of roughly $23.97 overall, but in expensive areas, even slightly higher rates still might not cover the living costs.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And then there's the whole situation with union minimums in 2025, where AGMA stipulates contracts that can run from $625 to $1,263 weekly for first-year dancers. What do you think about those figures?
Well, they're a baseline for sure. But honestly, it's kind of a double-edged sword. While they guarantee a certain amount of work over 40 to 52 weeks, it definitely highlights how even an entry-level position in prestigious companies is a significant commitment.
Absolutely. One could even argue that in markets with a really high cost of living, these unions need to push for even higher numbers, right?
Yeah, I kind of see your point there. I mean, there have been instances like in New York where dancers have gone on strike because the wages didn't compensate for the local costs.
Exactly, that's a fair critique. It does really emphasize the ongoing struggle many dancers face, even when linked to top-notch companies with great reputations like the NYCB or ABT.
Absolutely. And speaking of top companies, it's interesting to note that companies like the Paris Opera Ballet and the Royal Ballet offer some of the highest salaries, sometimes up to $89,000 annually for their dancers.
Yeah, that's a significant jump from the lower end. Which brings us to the point of reputation and marketability. Dancers like Misty Copeland and Sylvie Guillem not only earned high salaries, but also built significant net worth through endorsements and additional ventures.
Right. It's like their net worth really skyrockets compared to the average dancer. For instance, Sylvie Guillem earned over $850,000 at her peak. Talk about setting the bar high.
That's mind-blowing. And then you notice that these high earners often have diversified portfolios, teaching, choreographing, even modeling in some cases, to enhance that stability.
Exactly. Diversification is key. It's a perfect example of how success in ballet isn't just about the core salary. It's about building a whole ecosystem that supports your financial well-being.
Yeah, that really resonates. Let's also touch on how career paths vary. Traditional company roles versus alternative paths like acting or performing in musicals. Do you think the latter provide more stability?
Well, they can. Traditional roles might give you consistency, but alternative paths offer a creative outlet and sometimes a more stable income if you land consistent gigs in those areas. But it's a trade-off. Less consistency, perhaps, in the traditional dance world.
I see what you mean. Right. And I sometimes wonder if this reliance on supplementary income demonstrates a larger issue in how ballet as a career is structured financially.
That's a valid point. The structure definitely seems to lean on the idea that you have to wear many hats, dancer, teacher, choreographer, to really thrive financially.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's the aspect of negotiating contracts. It can be really daunting for dancers negotiating W-2 equivalents and factoring in benefits.
Yeah, talking about practical tips, do ask about cost of living clauses, benefits like pension plans, even housing stipends in some high rent markets. These can add roughly 15-20% more to your total compensation.
Very handy info. It's almost like a ballet in itself, balancing the art with financial literacy.
Exactly. You know, it's like dancing gracefully, not just on stage, but also in the financial arena.
Right, couldn't have put it better. And it seems like despite the challenges, there's a lot of passion driving people in this field. The dedication to the craft is unmatched, even if the paycheck sometimes tells a different story.
Totally. At the end of the day, it's the love for dance that fuels all this, even if the numbers don't always make it a cushy career.
That's the crux of it. Well, this conversation really highlights the complexity behind ballet dancer salaries, from state-by-state differences to the career progression and the demands of balancing passion with financial necessities.
Absolutely. It's a rich tapestry of art, struggle, and ambition all woven together. And I think listeners can take plenty of lessons from this, whether they're dancers, aspiring ballet artists, or just curious about how niche career paths
For sure,
work.
That's what makes it so engaging. Thanks for this deep dive. It's been enlightening to unpack these layers and see the full picture.
No problem at all. It's always a pleasure breaking down these topics. And remember, behind every dancer's graceful performance is a story of hard work, negotiation, and sometimes creative survival strategies.
Absolutely, well said. All right, folks, that's our roundup on ballet dancer salaries, the highs, the lows, and the balancing act in between. Thanks for tuning in.
Catch you next time for another insightful exploration into the world of performance arts and beyond.